Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
You know, I have been having a lot of calls through a Spanish interpreter at work.
A
this last week.
Spanish interpreter?
Yeah, all the time. And the calls take a lot longer and they're a lot harder. But I've discovered one thing that makes them work a lot easier.
Yeah?
Is if I just throw in the word mucho, I've discovered it means a lot to them.
I happened to come across a site called Mama Bears with an S. They've got 60 chapters, and they're dedicated to support and encouragement, resources, that kind of thing for the LGBTQ plus community.
I had never heard anything about them until you mentioned it to me. They're great. It's realmamabears.org, and it's M-A-M-A. I tried to put two M's in there. I'm misspelling it, apparently.
Whoa.
Yeah, realmamabears.org. They support, educate, and empower families with LGBTQ plus members, and they advocate for the LGBTQ plus community.
So as I was wandering around on the site, I noticed that there were various days throughout the year that they look toward for different things that are coming up. And one of the things that caught my eye, a week from today, if you're listening on Monday, January 19th to the 23rd or through the 23rd, it's called No Name Calling Week.
So the first observation of this No Name Calling Week was way back in 2004. It was created by K through 12 teachers and students, and it was sponsored by GLSEN, that's the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. And its focus is to end name calling and other forms of bullying in school by educating people about the harmful and long-term effects of bullying. We've talked on this podcast quite a bit about bullying, but I think, you know, if you don't realize, you can kind of figure, well, name calling is a minor kind of thing. It doesn't matter that much. But when you really look at the actual, real deep effects that it has on people, it's terrible.
Yes, it certainly is. It's terrible for everyone. We like to think it's terrible for kids, and it is. It can be so devastating for kids that they would consider suicide. There are so many bad things about it, and it's devastating for adults as well. But they kind of know how to shake it off or make believe it doesn't count. You know, what you learned when you were in grade school, sticks and stones might break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But they do.
But they do. Sure, they do.
Yes, and unfortunately, we have people on the national and even international level who practice that, and it's terrible. It's unfortunate. And if you think of somebody who's supposed to be a role model and does something like that, it's so inappropriate, and it signals to other people, well, this is the way it should be. I think this is acceptable now. This is the 21st century. I mean, after all, can't we do all this? Well, we can't.
To me, one of the biggest lessons that I took from my Christian theological background is the idea that all people are made in the image of God. And I think whether or not you are a person of faith, whether you believe that humans are made in the image of God, or even if you just believe that God is made in the image of people, the idea is that people are something special. We understand when we lose a life, we realize how important that life was.
Yes.
But yet it's so easy to forget in the midst of our day-to-day lives how important the lives of the people are around us. And so what this means is not just that we tell other people that it's wrong to call names, but it means that we also counteract our own inclination to call names back.
A long time ago, I would say maybe 30 years ago, I read a book which was written in Norwegian, translated into English, and it was called The Troll Circle. This woman from outside of the community ended up marrying a man who was part of that community. But this goes back to the 17th century. This community was so isolated that in order for you to get there, there was no road. You just had to know which way to go. That was an isolated community. This man married her, brought her into the community, and the women in the community did not accept her. And they talked about her, they gossiped about her, and they called her various names, usually not to her face because they're mild-mannered Norwegians. And so they would continue to talk about her, and she never became accepted. But it became so bad, and she heard from other people what they were saying and what they were doing and the names they were calling her, that eventually that gossip drove her to the point where she killed herself by jumping off a cliff. And that is an example to those people, or was an example to those people, that they have violated the commandment that says, thou shalt not kill. They did it with words.
It's terrible.
It is.
But of course, with No Name Calling Week, we start with ourselves. Because it's easy to point the finger out there and to say, it's all of those bad people out there. But nobody sees themselves as the bad person. Do you think that those women in that village saw themselves as doing wrong?
Oh, no, they were doing right because they were sharing this information with their friends.
Sure, it's a little thing. It's not a big thing at all. You know, I think to the episode of 30 Rock, there was an episode in season 3 called Reunion where Liz Lemon, the character played by Tina Fey, attends her high school reunion. And this whole time, she thought that she was bullied. But she discovers that she was actually the class bully. And so then she has to go and try to apologize and make amends. And it is such a classic episode where the reason why she was rude to people, the reason why she was so harmful to the people around her, is because she told herself a story where she was the victim.
Interesting.
But when she saw the reality of how things actually were, she used that story to set herself up, and she became the bad guy in other people's stories.
Wow.
And I think so often we can tell ourselves we have good reasons for calling names. You know, because the people out there that we're calling names, they really are worthy of our ridicule. They really are worthy of us coming down on them. And we forget that when we call names, we participate in the exact same system of oppression that we're trying to dismantle.
All the time.
By committing to no name calling, what we're doing is we're saying we are not going to make the cycle worse by contributing back into it. We're instead going to call it out and stop. Stop the name calling entirely. Stop pushing back. And you know, there is such a push in our society right now. I think especially with girls or with people that are part of marginalized communities to say, oh, well, we're going to make fun of you a little bit. And if you push back, if you get angry about it, you get upset. Oh, well, you're not one of the good ones. But if you're one of the cool ones, you're one of the fun ones, you'll just kind of put up with it.
Right. Exactly.
And what we're doing during this week is we're saying, no, it's not okay. It's never okay. And there are ways around it.
I think what the concept of this whole idea is if they take a whole week and they say, we're not going to accept this, what it's really doing is not saying occasionally, oh, that's not acceptable to say that, but to say, during this week, we've got signs, we've got posters, we've got a variety of things out there, and everyone is saying, when you say something like that, stop it. You can't do that now. And it's only for a week, but what happens is it lives on. What's interesting about this is that this occurs the third week of January every year, and it has been going on since 2004. And it is spread so that there's all over the country people are doing it. And they're not just doing it in schools, although that is really the largest group that's doing it right now, but that spreads also to workplaces and to organizations and clubs and just a wide variety of things. And people can pick up on that very quickly. If you are using a nickname or a slur for the person, they'll pick up on that and it'll grow and it can be really bad. And that's what happens. And when you get to the point where the person that is being called that just loathes that, they get to the point where they don't want to be there anymore. They might leave their job and go work someplace else because they're called something terrible. It's a tough, tough situation. And to come up with something like this, I think is very logical in doing something to put a stop to that kind of language.
The first appearance of the word name calling, that's a hyphenated name-calling, goes back to 1819, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, when they started saying this is a real thing. But it was really then in the 2000s where we started to notice how bad this is.
And they address it in a variety of ways. There was a book published called The Misfits in 2001. That was James Howe. He published the first book in his Misfits series.
And what happens in that book, it tells the story of 4 young adults who at school were mocked about their height and their weight and for what they said and how they looked. With the intent of changing the bullies' perspectives, they all decided to run for the school's student council. And while they lost, they called themselves the No Name Party. And they ended up convincing the principal to have a no name calling day to stop all of the mockery. And so I've never read this book, but it sounds like an amazing book talking about how they show that these misfits, these outsiders, change the way that their school works.
And it was just 3 years later, in 2004, that they came up with the first celebration of No Name Calling Week. Instead of a day, they went for a week. And that's what we were referring to earlier when we talked about the teachers from K through 12. All of the teachers got together with the idea of organizing the first name calling week. And they chose that third week in January. And it's been going on ever since.
Couple of movies then that have come out in the past decade that have been really influential in this. The first was a 2015 movie called The Duff, where Bianca, the lead character, discovered that her friends were calling her Duff, which is the designated ugly fat friend, and how that affected her.
Not long after that, A Girl Like Her came out and was released, dealing with the same type of subject and the anti-bullying, and again, a powerful movie of its own.
And then in 2016, the movie The Handsome Devil was released, or I guess it's just Handsome Devil, that features a gay rugby player, Connor, and how he is made fun of for being gay, and he almost gives up his rugby game, well-deserved victory, because his bully is bullying him so much.
We'll be back, and when we do, we're going to be talking about how to observe Name Calling Week. What can you personally do?
I am Mark Zemer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
Much of us were laughing during the break here because I don't know if you realize this, but you called it name calling week. This is when we want to do the no name calling.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
I wonder how many folks noticed that as you were playing through. So how can we actually celebrate this? What can we, as listeners to this podcast or people that are associated with this podcast do? Well, of course, one of the big things is that if you're associated with a school at all, this would be the time to see, can we implement this? We've still got a week out, so it's going to be a little bit tight, but you can see what you can do in your own school.
Yeah, and if you're not working in the school, you're not part of the school, you could at least go to the school and suggest that they might do something about it. Talk to the principal or somebody in the school. If your kids are in the school, if your grandkids are in the school, there's an opportunity to open a door.
And this can be a great time where even if you are not able to get it so that your school celebrates this specific week, most schools do have an anti-bullying program. You can learn how you can get involved with them. You can participate in one of their programs that they already have going on.
You can make a sign. You can make a sign that tells of the dangers of name calling and why it's important to stop it. See how it can contribute to the day. It really is going to be helpful for you to begin to get the word out. And it's something, when people hear it, when people see it, they'll say, oh, of course, I'll support that. It's not something that is in any way at all political. I mean, we use it in a variety of ways, but everyone, I believe, would agree that's something that just isn't appropriate and we need to stop it.
One of the best ways that you can make a sign right now is through social media. And so you can actually go to realmamabears.org or go out to their Facebook page, and they've got things that you can share there. You can also find another GIF of your own or another graphic that talks about the dangers of bullying. There are resources at glsen.org that talk about how you can implement things, and there will be other things there that you can share on social media as well. So that can be a great way, just calling attention to it and maybe even calling yourself out. You know what? I myself have fallen into a place where there are people that I dislike, and so I have thought that it's okay to call them names, and I'm going to be stopping that myself. When you step up and you say, I am making a change for myself, that shows that this is not just talk, but this is real for me as well.
I think most of us have been victims of name calling, and we've also been perpetrators of name calling. It's pretty common to find somebody who's never been exposed to either one of those sides.
Right. I remember when I was in middle school or junior high, as we called it at that time, it felt like that was just the currency of our entire class.
Yeah.
And there was a pecking order, and I knew right where I was in that pecking order. And I felt like the more people made fun of me, the more that I passed it on to other people. And that is one of the darkest times of my life. I wish that I could go back and take back some of those things that I said and that I did during that time, because I just think that is not who I was, and it is not who I want to be ever.
I remember somebody from another community moved into our community, and I think they might have been in high school at the time. And when people asked him what his name was, he said, Jerry, call me Cam. And from that time on, everybody said, hey, Jerry, call me Cam. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Are you talking about Gordon Call Me Dave?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was what everybody called him.
Yeah. It was
right.
funny,
That's right. He was a really nice guy, but I do think that probably started as a bullying sort of thing. I don't know, because by the time it got to me, that was just what everybody called him. So I don't know.
I know we did a lot of that in the Army. I heard a lot of that in the Army. And I heard a lot of it when I got out of the Army and I joined the workforce. And I realized that some of our clients had nicknames that I'd hear from other people, that they would use those nicknames, of course, not to the client, or you wouldn't have the client anymore. And then in college, of course, you heard more of that. There were teachers that had names that everyone knew, and I suspect it probably got to the teachers as well. But there were professors in college that were the ones that had the nickname.
Sure. When I was in high school, I remember the librarian at the time. Everybody called her Conan because it was Conan the librarian. And everybody laughed. But then everybody knew, oh, yeah, I got to go return this book to Conan. Everybody would do that. And, I think that one of the reasons why name calling becomes so acceptable is because there's a line where it's fun teasing.
Yes.
The problem is when that line gets crossed. And that's where the playfulness of it stops being playful and it starts being malicious. And really, we're not saying stop having fun with your friends. We're not saying, never have, names that you can call your friends. But when it crosses over and you think, I am doing to others something that I would not want done to me.
Yeah.
Then it's time to say, we're done with this. And of course, what that is going to be different for everybody. So as we all know, there are lots of times where something that would really bother you doesn't bother the other person at all. They say, it's fine, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of times where you think, well, that would never bother me. And they say, that actually really bothers me. So there's an aspect of needing to be sensitive to what other folks are. And it really just means that we would think beyond ourselves and just think, how can I actually care about other people? How can I be a good person that is contributing to other people's lives rather than tearing them down?
Well, I've never heard of this before this week. And I can tell you, it's going to start with me. I am going to make certain if I hear anybody using something that is not acceptable, I'm going to call them out on it. And I'm pledged to do that. So, and if I have any things that I'm saying that would be the same way, I'm going to make certain that I correct myself. If I say it, I'm going to say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I used to have a nickname for my sister, and I forgot, I hadn't used it for many, many years. And one day at Christmas time, we were all together, and my sister was there, and I happened to refer to her what I was...
With the nickname.
Yes, and that did not go well. And I hadn't said that for 10 years, and it just came out, and I felt really bad about it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So...
Yeah, I remember a time where we were together at a work event, and it was an educational event led by a friend of ours. And we were looking at some of the other events, and you saw one on there that you thought was kind of funny, and you were making fun of it. Now, this was quite a while ago, but you were making fun of it. And I remember that the educator, the person that was putting all these together said, now, Joe, you wouldn't want someone making fun of your thing like this, of your educational event, so let's not do that to others. And I thought it was such a good way to handle that. She didn't make you feel bad, but she did point out, this is not how we behave. And I think we share that story because we're not immune to this. I'm not immune to it. You're not immune to it. None of us are immune to it. And so when somebody is saying that kind of language, this is not a time for us to say, well, you terrible person, I can't believe what a jerk you're being right now.
Right.
We sensitively say, hey, this is not how I would want to be treated, so let's not treat others the same way.
And we're bringing this up because the people who are in the LGBTQ plus community or people who are supporters of the LGBTQ plus community are very susceptible to having themselves be victims of this. And we want to make certain that we begin to start the trend.
5 facts about school bullying that you should know. Number 1, the most common form is verbal harassment, which includes name-calling, mockery, and insults.
Yeah.
Number 2, it is rampant in the U.S. 1/5 of students in their teens say that they have been bullied. Number 3, it leads to truancy. Over 150,000 teen students have skipped school because of bullying.
Yes.
It got so bad that they said, I can't go back again. I have a feeling that I have witnessed that firsthand with one of my kids. Number 4, bullied students perform poorly. Bullying has a direct influence on test scores, as most students who are bullied score lower marks in class than their peers who are not bullied. And number 5, it influences other people's thoughts. Bullies are most likely to influence what other people think about those that they bully. So it really has a profound impact when you actually do it. So that's why No Name Calling Week is so important.
And that isn't just school. That is the workforce. That is anything. If you are in a volunteer organization and somebody starts doing something like that, you're going to discover it won't be long and your volunteer organization is going to start to shrink.
And the reason why we do this, you think, well, just calling attention to it, is that really going to change people? Yes, it will. Because many times the bullies either don't realize that they're doing it, or it's become so normal to them that they have stopped even examining why it matters. It's just become part of what they do. And to them, they're not being hurt by it, so they can really crank up the hurt that they're committing to other people because they're not getting hurt by it at all. When we call attention to it, it makes people stop and think, is this really who I want to be?
I have a request for everyone out there. If you're going to try to be participating in that No Name Calling Week, if you notice something and if you've acted on this, I'd like you to send us an email. You could just email us at trandescended@gmail.com and tell us what you did or tell us what you noticed. Give us a little story. If we like it, we'll include it in one of our future podcasts.
And if you know somebody that is an educator, would you please share this podcast with them? Let
Yes.
them know about this and how important this is, and maybe we can pass the information on and get more and more schools that would be celebrating this, because it really does make a difference. We're grateful to have you coming back here week after week to this podcast, where we strive every week to be your voice of positivity, finding more ways that we can make this world a better place than we came into it.
Happy No Name Calling Week. And with that, we'll see you Monday.